All right, good evening. My name is Tricia Crowley with the League of Women Voters, and on behalf of the League, the NAACP, and the News Gazette, we'd like to welcome you to tonight's forum. And the forum tonight is for the Democratic primary for the office of Mayor of Urbana. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we are unfortunately not presenting this forum in person. We have asked for questions from the public, and for this forum, we got a ton of questions. And because of that, similar questions have been grouped, and so you may not hear your question asked in exactly the way that you presented it. And due to limited time, we will definitely not get to all of the submitted questions. Before we start, I'd like to comment or say a few things about the February 23rd primary. There will be, you can vote by mail. There is early voting, and there is voting at in-person polling places on election day. Because the number of people expected to actually vote in this election is lower than in certainly the general election, some polling places have been consolidated by the county clerk. So before you head out to vote on election day, check the county clerk's website for your polling place. It's a very simple process, and it'll be there right on the website. You can also check the county clerk's website for the early voting locations and times. So I urge everyone to vote in this February 23rd primary. The order for the candidates is going to be alphabetical, and therefore Andy Ma will go first with his opening statements, and then Diane Marlin, and then Dennis Roberts, and we'll do it in reverse for closing statements. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for an opening statement. Then I'll ask the questions that are submitted. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the questions. And at the end, each candidate will have 2 minutes for closing. Candidates will kindly refrain from any negative attacks on other candidates and not mention them by name. Will speak only to what they plan to do if elected. So let's begin with opening statements. Mr. Ma. You're muted.
Okay, hello everybody. I admit I'm a little nervous and a little uncomfortable right now, but I'm really glad to be here. I'm running for mayor because the office provides many opportunities to help and empower our community, and especially Urbana's most marginalized and vulnerable populations. There is so much the mayor can do that other communities around this country have already done, such as directly addressing police brutality, ending homelessness, and decarbonizing our energy grid. Urbana can and Urbana must take the bold steps that will make our city truly an Urbana for all. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Marlin.
I should know this by now. I'm Mayor Diane Marlin, running for re-election. My leadership reflects 2 terms on the Urbana City Council, a career in teaching and research at Parkland College and the University of Illinois, and experience owning and managing rental properties in Urbana. I have volunteer service in Urbana public schools, environmental advocacy, neighborhood organizing in Southeast Urbana. Over the past 4 years, my first term, we have built the foundation for Urbana's future. We restored sound financial management and professional administration, rebuilt confidence among the business community, sparked a new commercial and residential construction. And we laid the groundwork for making major new investment in public infrastructure in our next term. These efforts required a focus and discipline, a commitment to change, and resolve to make difficult decisions. We put the city back on solid financial footing, rebuilt our emergency reserves. This allowed us to maintain essential services during COVID-19 and provide critical support to residents and businesses. We are putting the health and well-being of our community first now and will continue to do so in the coming years, providing consistent messaging and passing measures that protected lives, even though that we know the personal sacrifice it required and the pain it caused. We will focus on vaccination, testing, and prevention measures going forward. Today, we're at a crossroads in history as we battle COVID-19 and address social and racial justice issues. We must redefine public safety in Urbana, reimagine the role of policing in it. I appreciate the guidance of the NAACP, the League, and community members as these efforts get underway. All our city policy and practice must be aligned with climate resilience and social justice. And we must invest in the public infrastructure that provides the framework for life in our city. Our streets, sidewalks, lighting, stormwater systems, fire stations, and other facilities were built by the generations before us. And we now need to do the same for the generations that follow. We'll focus on health, justice, infrastructure, and the economy in the years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marlin. Mr. Roberts?
Yes, hello. My name is Dennis Roberts. I'm an alderman of Ward 5, and I've served on the Urbana City Council for 16 years and served as the Urbana Mayor Pro Tem for about 6 years. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters of Champaign County for inviting me to participate in your forum. I have served on the council representing the East Urbana and North Cunningham Avenue residents for 16 years, and I have accomplished a lot of personal and community-centered goals. Being mayor offers the opportunity to take a wider scope of action. Urbana mayor must have a strong personal vision of the community and what it might become. I am interested in creative and not bureaucratic solutions to the challenges we face. Urbana is unique and has inherent strengths which clearly set it apart from its neighbors. We do not need to copy our neighbors, but be truly ourselves. The mayor must understand these qualities and work with the community to make them shine. Urbana has very capable city staff to help the mayor actualize any goal that we undertake. To be the mayor is also to be receptive to the input of the voices of the community and to respond to the community's concerns. And there are many significant ones still to be addressed today. The mayor must engage our community leaders to help solve the challenges and resolve the issues. During this time of evolution and social change, I believe that I can be a better listener and meet the community's challenges with an open door and an open heart. This community knows me well, since I've served as an alderman for several terms. I believe I've built a reputation of fair-mindedness, creative problem solving, and interest in success in our downtown, and I've worked actively on enhancing Urbana's image by creating global partnerships, celebrating Urbana's history, and assisting citizens in my ward who are a part of our at-risk community. And I invite you to support my candidacy for mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. We're going to start with questions in the same order. So we'll start with Mr. Ma. Could you describe the duties and responsibilities for the office of Mayor of Urbana?
Well, one of the main duties of Urbana's mayors is to help create a budget to present to the city council, which is very important because it decides which resources are prioritized. For instance, like around 30% of our budget goes to our police, which could be used for other social programs that could also provide better outcomes for marginalized communities who need those. Another is to cooperate with the city manager to appoint people in positions that be directly handpicked from the community. Another is to thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ma. Ms. Marlin.
The mayor works for the people of Urbana. We have a strong mayor-council form of government, which is different from the city of our sister city of Champaign. The mayor is the chief executive officer, and the Urbana City Council is the legislative body for the city. So the mayor works with council members and city staff to propose, pass legislation, and set goals. And then it's the mayor's responsibility to work with staff and council to implement them. As was mentioned, the mayor appoints department heads, management positions, responsible for proposing the annual budget. And when putting together a budget, it's important to remember that staffing first responder positions like police and firefighters, you're staffing a 24/7 position. So you're funding close to 168 hours a week versus a 40-hour week for typical other employees. So that's one of the reasons police and fire budgets do appear to have a higher percentage of the budget. We have to keep them staffed 24/7. One thing that is I didn't fully appreciate, and it's time to stop. I'm also the local liquor control commissioner, which is another whole adventure.
Thank you, Ms. Marlin. Mr. Roberts.
Well, the mayor, certainly the mayor has a lot of duties, and we pretty much are familiar with them. Managing staff, setting the direction of the community, I think visioning for the community and expressing what your vision of this community is very important. Nurturing the downtown is certainly one of the responsibilities of the mayor. Having a sense of what is exciting and makes the downtown vibrant, what can be done to make it transformed, bring activities to the downtown, because that stimulates business. It's important to be connected to the University of Illinois. There's a lot of resources at the university that we can partner with to achieve some of our goals. And of course, we're talking also about the need for economic growth in the community. But the economic growth needs to be done in a measured way, a thoughtful way, and one that's in harmony not only with our zoning, but also with our neighborhoods and their needs. So that's just one of the many things that would be attended to by a mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Okay, and we'll start rotating the questions. And the second one is, for Ms. Marlin, what qualifications do you bring to this position?
Well, as I mentioned in my statement, I did have 8 years on the Urbana City Council. I've lived in the community for several decades. And I had a great deal of volunteer experience in the Urbana public schools, a number of environmental issues. And that gave me an understanding of different neighborhoods, different issues, and understanding different perspectives from the community. At this point, I would draw on the experience of the past 4 years, which has been where we have basically addressed many problems in the internal infrastructure of the city. These are things that the public may not always see, but there were many things we had to address to get the city functioning in a more efficient and effective manner before we could start to tackle some of the broader problems. We also are going to, we rebuilt many relationships in the community and intend to focus on, as I said, our infrastructure going forward.
Thank you, Ms. Marlin. Mr. Roberts.
So the question is,
what qualifications do you bring to this position?
Well, certainly I've got 16 years of experience on city council, coordinating and activating and different projects and participating in the debates. I'm also the mayor pro tem. I've served for that in that capacity for several years. I represented the city of Urbana when we traveled to Thionville, France to celebrate their 175th anniversary of their freedom of their community just last November. So I took that kind of as a ceremonial role overseas. I'm a board member of the Champaign County Regional Planning Commission, so I hear a lot about what's planning and what the concerns are of that community countywide. And I'm also represent our community as a board member of the Illinois Sister Cities Association, the statewide organization, and I hold a responsibility of being a chairman of their award committee. So those are a few things among many others that I might bring to the community's service.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Mr. Ma, what qualifications do you bring to the position of mayor of Urbana?
I think one of my main qualifications to be mayor is because I care about the people of Urbana and the community. I promise to never do anything against the interests of Urbana and its communities. And I promise to do that because I will be listen to my supporters and the organization who has supported my campaign, and I will always be a member of this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. After 11 years without Urbana reinstated the position of city administrator. Explain why you think this is a good decision or not, Mr. Roberts.
So originally I was a little skeptical that we required that, but different cities have different ways of dealing with leadership in their communities. And I've seen some communities that had a mayor who did more symbolically in the community and allowed the city manager to handle a lot of the really important details. We have adopted a city manager position, and I think our city manager is very efficient. And I think it actually liberates the mayor somewhat to become more of a spokesperson and also a visioner to create the vision for the community and then depend upon efficient staff to fulfill it in various ways. So I've come to appreciate the city manager position and accommodate it. I guess that's what I would say.
Thank you. Mr. Ma, after 11 years without it, Urbana reinstated the position of city administrator. Explain why you think this is a good decision or not.
I think the city administrator position is as useful as the person who is serving in that role. If that person cares about the community and regularly reaches out, I think the city manager could be a great asset to the mayor and the city of Urbana.
Thank you. Ms. Marlin?
Well, restoring the position of city administrator was one of the top priorities that I brought to the office, and that was one of the first things that we did. I strongly support professional management of the city, provides stability, and the administrator manages the day-to-day operations. I've discovered that, well, you may have heard, being a mayor is like drinking from a fire hose. So it's a tremendous number of, you're drawn in many different directions, and having a city administrator to deal with the day-to-day operations allows the mayor to do the community outreach, to attend the meetings. As I said, I also serve as the local liquor control commissioner. There are many, many other duties that the mayor can fulfill with administrator taking care of the day-to-day operations. And one of the things we'll be looking ahead to is when we rewrite our comprehensive plan, I'll be participating in that and doing a tremendous amount of work in the community.
Thank you. Mr. Ma, this was a follow-up question. What role do you think the city administrator should play in forming city policy, and how much autonomy do you think they should have?
I think the city administrator should have the primary goal of serving the people. They should work with all local elected officials, including the mayor and the city council. As long as the city administrator is accountable to the people of Urbana, I think that role could be very useful for the community.
Thank you. Ms. Marlin, I'll repeat the question. What role do you think the city administrator should play in forming city policy, and how much autonomy do you think they should have in doing so?
City administrator does not form city policy. The city administrator helps craft it at the direction of the mayor, the city council, and then is responsible for implementing it.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts?
Yeah, yes, I remember the question, thank you. And actually, I think I partly covered that actually already, but what I would say is that a good, strong city administrator is a valuable tool to have in the community, just like a really good finance director and public works director and all the other staff senior appointments that you have on as a mayor's really council of advisors. The mayor can't do everything. It would be a daunting task to try to accomplish every single goal and responsibility. So having good staff is really important. The city administrator's position, I think it's a valuable one and one that I would rely upon quite a bit, I'm sure, to fulfill any goals that I would have and want to bring forward, which I certainly have some thoughts in that direction. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Marlin, describe the financial challenges facing Urbana now and how COVID is and will be a factor.
Well, I want to start with what we faced when 4 years ago. In the past 4 years, and we worked very closely with the city council and staff to do this, we eliminated a $2.5 million structural deficit. We restored adequate pension funding, repaid some short-term loans, and most importantly, we rebuilt our city reserves to the levels that were required and needed. And doing that has allowed us to weather the pandemic, maintain essential services without cutting staff, and move forward into the coming year. We are in a good financial position today. The next year or so is going to determine, in terms of our revenue. We are holding some positions vacant. We are being very cautious with our spending, but we will spend our resources where it's most important, and that is helping this community recover from the pandemic, helping residents and businesses to get the resources that they need.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, describe the financial unmuted, right? You're
no.
muted is apparently the phrase for 2020. So, Mr. Roberts, describe the financial challenges facing Urbana and how COVID is and will be a factor.
Well, certainly the COVID pandemic has really affected the community in so many different ways, socially and economically, structurally, and of course it's going to affect the city budget and its flexibility. We're going to be facing some pretty severe situations. The income flow into the city is going to be drastically changed, I think, because businesses, retail sales are down. So many businesses are, even trying to just survive. And the city has been able to, and I would continue to bring every kind of resource possible to assist the business community in our town. The one kind of glowing aspect of the future potentially is that we're going to be seeing the completion of several big developments in our community, which will eventually bring resources and economic flow into the city's coffers. But the greatest cost to the city's budget is its personnel. About 80% of our budget is personnel issues, and we have to maintain those. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ma, describe the financial challenges facing Urbana now and how COVID is and will be a factor.
Well, my highest priority is the people of Urbana. I put safety above everything else, and I am happy to work with businesses to preserve the safety of our community, because without our people, we don't have a city or a community.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, several questions were submitted regarding public participation at Urbana City Council meetings. And I've kind of consolidated them. Could you describe the current policy and whether you agree or disagree with it?
Well, we have had some changes due to going online and having virtual meetings. It was much more interactive when we met in person in the City Council building. And you could respond off of comments and people's input. The City Council would allow about 5 minutes for people to speak at that time, but we didn't have as many people trying to do so. Now we have limited it to 4 minutes, partly because we just have had so many inundation of people who want to participate. We're now discussing allowing the City Council members some time to respond to the community, which I think is going to be more healthy and give people a sense that we're not just up there as statues, we're actually listening and respecting their comments. So public participation has been a very important part of the last 8 months on the City Council, and it'll continue to be so.
Mr. Ma, do you want me to repeat the question?
Sure.
Several questions regarding public participation at City Council meetings were raised, and I consolidated them to this. Can you describe the current policy on public participation and whether you agree or disagree with it?
There has been a lot of criticism about our current policy regarding the silencing of people. If I am mayor, I would restore like the longer public participation section of the meetings. I would also ensure to make sure the time is accessible for everybody and ensure that the rules that we set up are followed by every member participating in the meetings.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes, public participation has always been a very important part of our meetings, and in fact, it's required by the Open Meetings Act. We did change the total amount of time allowed for it and the length of time a person may speak to accommodate the Zoom format, but it's still a very, very important part of the meeting. And it's a valuable part of the meeting. So we will continue to do it, and I appreciate the comment, and we are always willing to consider changes to the rules if it will accommodate the public's needs and the council needs better. But it is important to remember that in our City Council meetings and our committee meetings, we also have to get the business of the city done. And per the Open Meetings Act, our public meetings are the only time we as a public body can meet together and discuss issues. We cannot ever discuss it outside the council chambers or the Zoom meeting. So we have to allow time in our meetings for council debate, discussion, and voting to get the business of the city done.
Thank you. There were also questions about the FOIA and records. And so I'm going to ask Mr. Ma, do you agree with the city's current procedures with regard to the FOIA and Open Meetings Act? And if not, how would you change it?
I think that our current FOIA practice has been unclear and inaccessible for many. I plan to make FOIA requests accessible and easier for every member of our community and make the process as transparent as possible.
Marlin?
Yes, what you're referring to are the Freedom of Information Act requests for people who don't know what FOIA is. But yeah. Yes, the city of Urbana has always responded to FOIA requests. We comply with the law. We've had an unprecedented increase in volume and frequency of requests, and that has required us to upgrade our process and revise our process so it is efficient and serves the public need, and as well as makes good use of staff time. So we have consistently complied with the FOIA law, and we will continue to do so. We have recently given people the option of getting results in a Dropbox electronically, so we didn't have to print copies, because one of the things that we've seen this year is a dramatic increase in just the volume of pages requested, and it was going to require a lot of printing. So we want to keep costs down and make it accessible to the public, and we have improved our process quite a bit in the last 6 months.
Okay, and Mr. Roberts.
Yes, so the FOIA issue has come up quite a bit. Certainly there are a couple of people in the community that are pretty much very upset about how their FOIA requests have been handled. I think that we could only say that the city is doing the very best it can to try to meet those and to accommodate the community. We've actually changed some of our way that they're handling FOIA in the city building. We have assigned people to specialize in the FOIA responses, and we're following federal guidelines as far as making things available. There's a question about redactions that are, some part of the FOIA replies. These are defined by federal and state statute of what can be and what cannot be shared with the public. And a lot of times it has to do with cases that are still in court or pending. There's a lot of things that have to be replied to, and sometimes the burden of the volume of the requests to be fulfilled has become a real issue for the community. I mean, for the city staffs, and that's one of the issues that we're trying to solve.
Thank you. And Ms. Marlin, there were also submitted a number of questions concerning racial injustice and criminal justice system. So I'm going to consolidate some of those as well. Mm-hmm. And how will you lead the city of Urbana in addressing issues of racial injustice, specifically police brutality and the school to prison pipeline?
Well, we've begun that process this past summer when we adopted the 10 shared principles. We appreciate very much working with the NAACP and community members to do that. If you're going to reimagine public safety, we also have to reimagine public safety, the role of policing in it. And the 10 shared principles provides a framework for doing that. It's based on respect, it's based on a commitment to de-escalation, and based on building trust in the community. And that's where we begin. This is going to take a long time, but we have begun that work in a number of different ways.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, how will you lead the city of Urbana in addressing issues of racial injustice, specifically police brutality and the school to prison pipeline?
Certainly the community has had a lot of conversation about racial tension, the implicit bias aspect of traffic stops that are being studied and somewhat addressed finally by changing the direction that the police are using to focus where they patrol, from the communities of frequent call to locations where there's actually traffic accidents and traffic problems. Certainly retraining the police. And I've really been an advocate for de-escalation tactics and procedures to be added to the Police Training Institute. I even submitted a diagram about how that might be used effectively in training tools. And I think it's really important. The Black community has a lot of issues, and without their commitment and discussion, we're not going to be able to solve them. So I would like to have them at the table to help converse with us about the best process for going forward.
Thank you. Mr. Ma, how will you lead the city of Urbana in addressing issues of racial injustice, specifically police brutality and the school to prison pipeline?
I think the Aaliyah Lewis case clearly shows that police brutality does exist in Urbana. One of the most minimum steps that we can take is to keep the police out of Urbana schools. And as an alternative, we might consider reinstating ward officers in the school that has been there before. And another thing we might even consider is defunding the police as a whole.
Thank you. And Mr. Roberts, what is your vision for meaningful police oversight moving forward?
Okay, that's a big question. Police oversight would be certainly to continue to engage the strength and to build up the quality of the Citizens Police Review Board, which is the first point of contact that most people would have to file a complaint to the community concerning the city police. The CPRB has been going through changes currently. There's been membership changes, there's been retraining, and they're reviewing their policy. Many of the policies that they'd like to achieve are somewhat hindered by the fact that state law and the police negotiated work contract with the city have a great deal to do with the police oversight and responsibility. So those are things that we'd like to address and look at in the future and work on.
Thank you. And Mr. Ma, what is your vision for meaningful police oversight moving forward?
I think any meaningful police oversight would involve community participation. Any boards and commissions we must create must involve the direct involvement of the community to prevent conflicts of interest and anything that might hinder any attempts at a fair look at racial injustices and the police in our community.
Thank you. Ms. Marlin?
Police oversight begins with the mayor. I've learned one thing as mayor is that one of your most important hires is your police chief. So you have to make sure the police chief and his staff are aligned with the city's vision and values. And in my case, I expect accountability and a willingness to change. And we have that now. As far as oversight from the citizen standpoint, we were one of the first communities to establish the Civilian Police Review Board. We're in the process of reviewing its policies and practices. We're getting a lot of public input and suggestions for that. And there will be some revisions. It's one of the ordinance, it's one of the boards that really hasn't been reviewed over the years. And like everything else, we need to update the policies. But again, the oversight begins with the mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Ma, what will you do in regard to police reform, and what role do you think the police force should have in Urbana?
As I said before, I think we should seriously consider defunding the police and putting the resources that the police currently have in alternative means, such as social work, and making sure the people of Urbana have all their basic needs met.
Thank you. Ms. Marlin?
Could you repeat the question?
Yes. What will you do in regard to police reform, and what role do you think the police force should have in Urbana?
I think this starts with thinking about when a person calls 911, there's a reason they call and who's going to show up to help them. Police currently get about 25,000 calls for service a year. So one of the first places to start is to evaluate who calls, why, and who is the best person to respond to that call. And then I allocate our resources accordingly. It could be a police officer, it could be a mental health professional, social service professional, could be a specially trained civilian. But first thing we have to do, why are people calling, and who can best meet the needs of the caller and fulfill and deal with the situation that they find when they arrive.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, what will you do in regard to police reform, and what role do you think the police force should have in Urbana?
Well, the police force has kind of a dual role. They're there to do calls for service in emergencies. They're the emergency responder for many, many instances, but also they have the duty to protect the public and the public wealth and good, and the public health. And so we often think about them too often as arriving at the door as a SWAT team and not as people who are actually assisting the community and community members in various ways. The police are out there. They will help you, perhaps, restart your car or help you get to a flat tire fix or something like that, as well as to stop you for a traffic stop. Police courtesy, police awareness, police training to interact with the community is very important. And yes, we're going to be wanting to have alternative resources like public health officials or assistants come to certain kinds of calls, which the police are probably less able to accomplish and successfly.
Thank you. And this is going to be our last question before closing statements. One of our residents submitted a quite lengthy development question, and I've kind of boiled it down. And the question is, there seems to be a lot of construction in Urbana. Is there more we can do, we can require of developers in regard for whether the project is really needed, the aesthetics of the project, and addressing climate change? And so we're going to start with Ms. Marlin.
Absolutely, on all fronts. We have had a lot of construction in Urbana. A part of that was some things that we initiated. We have the first residential downtown construction in 15 years. We do have to incorporate climate resilience in everything we do. We have and develop some more tools to achieve that. One of the most important activities we'll be engaging in over the next couple of years is rewriting our comprehensive plan, and it will be seen through a lens of climate resilience and social justice. And we have to think about what we want the community look like in the future, how we want it to feel, how we want it to operate, and most of all, how it can be done in a responsible way. So there are many things we can incorporate and many specific things we can do in terms of building codes and conditions of getting public dollars in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, you want me to repeat the question?
Yeah, might as well.
Complicated, yes.
Go ahead.
There seems to be a lot of construction in Urbana. Is there more we can do to require, what can we require of developers in regard for the need for the project, its aesthetics, and climate change?
Well, we certainly do appreciate developers being interested in Urbana, and I think that Urbana offers a lot of opportunity for development, especially along University Avenue and other areas in the near downtown. But what we do want is to have the construction match the tenure and the feeling of the buildings around them in weight, mass, and features. They don't have to be slavishly related to that, but they have to have a conformity that works so that it's not, it doesn't disrupt the rest of the neighborhood, and it provides a visual aesthetics that would be useful, especially in the downtown. Things like setbacks that are appropriate from the road, landscaping, these things can be added to any development and discussed with the developer to make a better solution for the community. And of course, you need to have neighborhood meetings so that the impact on the neighborhood nearby is going to be understood and appreciated. And I would also advocate for a downtown overlay design district to preserve the historic quality of our downtown.
Mr. Ma?
I think all development must be reviewed, and the community should participate in determining if the development is serving the interests of the community.
Thank you. At this point, we'll have closing statements. You have 2 minutes for a closing statement. We'll go in reverse order. So Mr. Ma, you go first.
Okay.
Actually, not reverse.
So Urbana faces many issues, but they are not unsolvable issues. Cities like Burlington, Vermont has decarbonized their energy grid. Rockford, Illinois has presented plans to end homelessness in their city. And Waldo, Florida has defunded their police. I think that together we can make a city of Urbana for all.
Thank you. Ms. Marlin?
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, the News Gazette, and the NAACP for hosting the forum. I'm positively for Urbana. I'm for clear communication, an accountable and responsive government. I'm for sustainable growth to support our core functions and programs and the services that people need. And I strongly support building engaged and active citizens with a citywide focus. And most of all, I'm for collaboration. And I've worked very hard at that over the past 4 years. You can't get much done working alone. Our greatest strength lies in the people who care about this city and who will help us develop a vision for the future. So I've learned many things over the past 4 years as mayor of Urbana. And one of the most important is that the mayor is the public voice, face, and really represents the helping hand of the community. And because of that, my office is often the first place that people call. And sometimes it's the only place that people know to call. They may not know their city council representative. A lot of times they don't even know which government entity is responsible. We get a lot of calls about parks and schools and sewage treatment plant. But they do know what city they live in, and they do know they can call the mayor's office. And they do. And when they call, we do our very best to connect them with the services and the people that they need to talk to. So most of the time, as a mayor, you're working at a higher level issues, you're dealing with policies, you're in meetings all the time, and I'm not always available to take the phone calls directly. But when I can, I do, because it serves as a really good reminder of what our job truly is. And that is, bottom line, you have to be helping people and making their lives better. And when we commit to changing lives for the better, one life at a time, over that time, we change a community for the better, and we're doing it together. So it's one of the bright spots of my day, and I will continue to do that as much as I possibly can. So I will be working for the health of the community, for justice, for major investment in our infrastructure for the future, and for our economy. I would appreciate your vote on February 23rd.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to participate in this forum. I think it's very important for the community to have options and to be able to pick different directions and different styles of leadership in its every so often. That's one reason why I stepped down from my chair on the city council. I'd served for 16 years, and I thought probably it's time for some fresh energy to come in at that level. Well, I did that, and pretty soon people in my community, my neighbors, suggested I should be considering running for mayor. I think that people realize that sometimes administrative efficiency is just not enough to revitalize a community. The support of our local economy and bringing new business development is going to be crucial as we rebound from the effects of the pandemic, but everything that we do needs to harmonize with what we have already and what we aspire to as people. Urbana's strength is really its people, their diversity, their talents and aspirations. And I would like to offer an open door to new ideas and real projects that can beautify and enliven our city. And I believe that there are probably 100 citizen philanthropists in this community who have offered the opportunity to support a specific project that would create recognizable and definite change in our downtown. They might step forward to help transform our community. even during a difficult economic period. So as mayor, I would be happy to offer anybody the opportunity to do so. And I invite you to visit my website and to communicate with me as you will. I appreciate your vote in February. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you all for participating in the forum. It went really well for our new format here. And thanks to the League of Women Voters, the NAACP, and the News Gazette for sponsoring us. And a special thanks to Michelle Cooper for keeping us on track, on time. Thank you, Michelle. And a special thanks to Jonna von Behrens, who has worked really hard to put all of these forums together. I'd urge you to vote on February 23rd or before, vote by mail, early voting, and to look for information about the candidates on our candidate guide at the votechampaign.org website. And these forums will be attached to the candidates' information on that website. So thank you, good night, and everyone vote.
Thank you all.